I woke up reborn, and to my astonishment my inner thoughts could be heard by everyone in the family. I've been reborn. In my last life Celia pushed me off a cliff, and only as I was dying did I learn she was the illegitimate daughter of my dad and his mistress. This time I won't let her get away with it. My mother sitting beside me suddenly shivered. I continued thinking, if my brother finds out that Celia is about to give him a sterilizing poison, what will he do? My brother suddenly closed his legs. I kept thinking, if Celia's fiancé Julian found out, Celia would have already given him several green hats, wouldn't he end up with cervical spondylosis? Julian suddenly went weak in the legs and collapsed to the ground. Mia, if you're going to eat then eat properly, what's with the attitude? A stern voice snapped me back to reality. Wasn't I pushed off a cliff by Celia? How was I back home? I had been reborn. And into a month ago. Right now, Dad was sitting at the head of the table, looking down at me as he lectured, "We have guests in the house, and you're going to sulk in front of them?" Celia hurried to speak for me, "Dad, don't blame sister. Maybe she's still mad at me." Daddy slammed the table hard. "She's exactly like that, can't even tolerate a little sister." The rest of the family nodded in agreement. "That's my father, yes, my real father, yet he publicly insulted me for the sake of another daughter, Celia. Celia is the child he adopted. When he first brought her home he said the fortune teller had declared that Celia was a lucky star who would bring prosperity to the Shin family. My mother was also a businesswoman, she trusted this kind of reasoning the most, so she agreed when my father brought her into the family. He raised her from 5 until she was 18, treated her as if she were his own daughter, and even neglected me. I watched in helplessness as Celia gained the family's sympathy by playing the victim, while they pushed me further and further away. Whenever Celia cried, they blamed me, lacking generosity, unable to tolerate even a sister. In the end, I got separated from my family during a mountain ancestor worship trip, and Celia shoved me off a cliff. But before I died, I learned the whole truth about Celia's background. It turned out Celia wasn't adopted by my father from an orphanage at all, she was my father's illegitimate daughter with his mistress. And they were planning to gradually eat into my mother's shares. By then, they would ceremoniously welcome the other woman into the household. And my mother would be left with colossal debts, dragged off to prison. My 2 older brothers would naturally meet grim fates as well, one sterile and committing suicide, the other failing the college entrance exam, sinking into despair. My fists clenched as that thought kept running through my mind. I'd been reborn. In my last life Celia pushed me off a cliff, and only as I was dying did I learn she was the illegitimate daughter of my dad and his mistress. This time I won't let her get away with it. Yet the woman sitting beside me, my mother, suddenly flinched. She instinctively retorted, "What nonsense are you talking about?" However, I didn't answer her, instead I kept replaying it in my mind. If I remember correctly, by now brother's cup has already been laced by Celia with a poison that will leave him without heirs. Once he drinks it, Celia will frame me and pin the crime of poisoning on me. No. I can't let brother drink that drink. But just as I was about to overturn his cup, I saw him looking at me with a stunned expression. What kind of look was that? Did that happen in the previous life? I froze, not knowing what to do. Then Celia's voice suddenly sounded, "Brother, come, let me toast you." Saying that, Celia lifted her glass, smiling as she aimed to clink it with Big Brother. In my mind I was shouting, "No. Don't drink." Just as I was about to rise and overturn the table, Big Brother suddenly stood up. He looked flustered, his brow furrowed, and he showed an uncharacteristic lack of confidence. "Sorry, I just remembered I have an appointment, I'm going to be late, I have to go." As he spoke he stood to leave, but hesitated for a moment, then took his drink with him. "It's hot outside, I'm afraid I'll get thirsty on the way, so I'm off," he said with a smile as he walked away. I was puzzled, why was this different from the last life? Clearly, in the last life, brother had swallowed that drink without hesitation. But this time he took it with him. At the same time, he sat in the car, uneasy. The driver asked, "Young master, where would you like to go?" He glanced at the drink beside him, continually rubbing his palms. Could it really be poisoned? No. How could Celia hurt him? Celia was the kindest, Celia loved him the most. Still, his paranoia won out and he yielded, to the hospital. Soon, the car reached the city's most prestigious hospital. Meanwhile, the banquet at home had not yet ended. I kept replaying it in my head. Lately, Mom hasn't been going to the company because she's been busy with Alex's college entrance exams, and Dad has long since colluded with the shareholders. When the time comes they'll push Mom out of the company, saddle her with massive debts, and throw her in prison. Then Dad will marry some beautiful woman from outside and live happily as a family of 3 with Celia, while our Shin family will be utterly ruined forever. I was lost in my own inner world and didn't notice at all that my mother sitting beside me and Alex sitting opposite had both changed. They were looking at me in disbelief. I kept thinking, oh right, the college entrance exam is tomorrow. Celia will tear up Alex's admission ticket and then pin it on me. Then I'll be the one my whole family spits on. After the ancestral rites on the mountain, they'll abandon me, we'll get separated, and Celia will push me off the cliff. What a cruel scheme. No way. Today I have to warn second brother Alex and make him guard his admission ticket. I can't let Celia keep framing me. Just then, Dad suddenly spoke. Honey, Alex, why aren't you two eating? Their faces went pale, they glanced at each other. Dad, Mom, the college entrance exam is coming up and I'm not in the mood. I'm going back to study. Mother agreed, I'm as nervous as the child. I'll stay with him. Father didn't yet know what had happened, he just smiled. Sure, after the exam we'll go travel. I felt puzzled. Hey, why are they all leaving? This isn't right. It wasn't like this in my previous life. Just as I looked up at their receding figures, Julian's face appeared before me. He was our guest today, my childhood friend, and at the same time, Celia's fiancé. I sighed and thought to myself, what would Julian do if he knew Celia had already put several cuckold caps on him? At that moment, Julian's stool suddenly flipped over and he fell heavily to the ground with a thud. Things began to slip out of my control, because I realized they were all different from the last life. No. Why are they acting so strangely? But I didn't have time for wild thoughts. 8 o'clock was almost here, and Celia was about to ruin Alex's exam admission ticket. I crept upstairs and slipped into Alex's room. It was empty. The room was pitch black. I kept searching for Alex's admission ticket, when suddenly a hand yanked me into the darkness. I startled, about to cry out, but that big hand clapped over my mouth. Shoo, I didn't dare breathe. I could only watch with wide eyes as Celia tiptoed in and began searching for the admission ticket. Where is it? Where is it? Finally, she found it on the bed, and with a ripping sound, the exam admission ticket was torn to pieces. Heh. Mia, if they think you did this, wouldn't you be kicked out of the Shin family? Okay, next we go find you. We'll lure you in, and then, catch you red-handed, haha. What excuse should we use? Say Alex had a sudden heart attack. After all, you're the only one who cares about that idiot's health. She tossed the scrap of paper carelessly to the ground, smiled, and walked away. I sank to the floor, and only then saw who stood behind me. It was Alex. Alex stood there with eyes blank, incredulously staring in the direction Celia had gone. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, not even if you beat him to death would he have believed that Celia could be that sort of person. No. Celia. Celia clearly loved him the most, yet the voice recorder in his hand was still glowing. This was all incontrovertible evidence. Until I nudged him and asked, how did you know Celia was coming to ruin your exam admission ticket? He looked into my eyes, our gazes met, and he simply didn't know what to say. Should he say, I can hear what you're thinking? That would be absurd. Seeing him silent, a pain struck my heart. Was Alex terribly upset? Of course, after all, the one he loved most was Celia, not a biological sister, but like one in every way. Seeing her treated as a biological sister like that, he must feel utterly desperate, unbearably pained. But I remember, when he knew I had made a mistake, he wasn't this sorrowful. He was only angry. So, in the end, I was not the child the family cared about. I stifled the sting in my eyes and was about to get up and leave, but he grabbed me roughly. "If you go out now and run into Celia, she'll definitely try to smear you." I forced a bitter laugh. "Even if I don't go out, she will." Sure enough, Celia, unable to find me outside, still chose to splash filth onto my name. I heard her shouting from the corridor, "Someone! My brother's exam admission slip has been torn." Soon Dad and Mom had both come to the door. "What's going on?" "Dad." "Mom. Brother has his college entrance exam tomorrow." I came to cheer him on, but I found the house empty and his admission ticket torn to pieces. "What?" They hurried inside and indeed saw a pile of fragments on the floor. "See. Someone must have snuck into Alex's room and torn up his admission ticket. Who hates him enough to do something like this to him?" Their father slammed the table hard. Who else could it be? Besides Mia, who in this family would stoop so low? If it had been before, Mom would have agreed with them, belittling me until I was worthless, even regretting having given birth to such a troublesome child. But now, Mom seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly called Alex. By then Alex had long since helped me climb out the window and run. "Alex, where did you go?" "Me?" Alex pretended to be relaxed. "I'm outside. I thought about it, it's better to stay in a hotel, closer to the exam site. I can get a little more sleep." "Is that so?" "Then your admission ticket." "Don't worry, I brought both my ID and my admission ticket." "But, wasn't your admission ticket torn?" "What? Torn?" He feigned shock. "Good thing I printed 2 copies, it won't affect the exam." At that moment, Celia's shriek came through, "Brother! Whoever tried to harm you, you must get to the bottom of this." Alex sneered, "Don't worry, I'll investigate thoroughly, but it'll be after the college entrance exams, okay?" Saying that, he hung up the phone. Then he sat on the grass, staring blankly at the sky. I stood up to leave, but he grabbed me. "If you go back now, they'll just berate you, and they might even kick you out." I shook my head. "Who said I'm going back?" "You're the one thinking of running away, do you think I won't?" "Where are you going?" For some reason, I actually saw a trace of concern in his eyes. Was it an illusion? I thought to myself silently, how could he possibly care about me? He clearly said before that I'm no better than a dog. But I didn't notice the flash of pain in Alex's eyes. I shrugged off his hand, "None of your business where I'm going." At first, I was completely consumed with how to save my family. But after I ran out, I suddenly felt there was no need to keep wasting myself on them. They had hurt me for so many years, why should I save them? At that moment I didn't know they could hear the voice in my heart, nor that they had already begun to fight back. Alex just stood there and watched me leave. My silhouette departed more resolutely than anyone he'd ever seen walk away. He belatedly got up to look for me, but he searched every street and alley and couldn't find a trace of me. "Handsome, want a candied hawthorn?" He walked up to the familiar candied fruit stall and realized this night market was a place he and Celia used to come to often. How ridiculous he was, coming to Celia's favorite spot to look for Mia. How could he possibly find her? But, a wave of guilt suddenly washed over him. He couldn't believe he didn't even know where Mia liked to go. He was wandering the streets in a daze when he walked straight into someone. He hurriedly apologized, then realized the person was his older brother. "Big brother, what are you doing here?" His brother looked equally distraught, his eyes red. "What are you doing here?" Alex, as if having suddenly found a lifeline, seized him and began pouring out his heart. "Big brother. Celia's trying to get me." She tore up my exam admission ticket and tried to pin it on Mia. Big brother, however, said, "I know, Celia intended to harm me. That drink really was poisoned, she wanted to cut off my line." "What?" She's actually that vicious. I had thought Celia's treatment of him was already excessive, but I hadn't expected anything worse. Big Brother forced a bitter laugh, "Huh. I treated her like a true sister and spoiled her, and I ended up raising a calamity." If I hadn't overheard Mia speaking, I probably would have bled out on the operating table. "By the way, Big Brother, you can hear Mia's inner thoughts too, right?" He nodded. "So, does that mean Mom can hear them as well?" No sooner had the words fallen than they received a call from their mother. "Jincheng Cafe. Wait for me there." I walked for a long time before reaching the subway station. I used the last 5 yuan I had to take the subway and arrived at my friend's house. I only asked to stay for one night. She didn't ask any unnecessary questions and agreed immediately. She knew my situation. She had always envied that my family was wealthy, but after seeing my embarrassment, she realized not every young lady lived well. I had nothing with me except my school bag. In truth, there wasn't much to bring. My belongings were just a few clothes, 2 pairs of shoes, my school bag, and some toilet paper. I lay on the floor bed and thought for a long time. I'll try to arrange dormitory accommodation tomorrow. The cafeteria hires helpers, you get free meals and a little pay. Then I could afford the lodging fee. Thinking that, I drifted off to sleep in a haze. I had a dream in which I relived every humiliation I had suffered in the Shin household. Before Celia came, I was the apple of my parents' eyes, the golden child to my 2 brothers. Julian would solemnly declare we were betrothed, that he would marry me. But ever since Celia arrived, everything changed. She first hypocritically won my sympathy and shadowed me everywhere, and then, when the moment was right, shoved Julian into the water and pinned the blame on me. Julian nearly choked to death. The Xiao and Shin families had always been close, but this incident almost tore them apart. After that, Mom and Dad were especially disappointed in me, and I became a thorn in the Xiao family's side. I was punished by the family law. The whip bit into my frail body. I begged them to believe me, but they sneered and said they regretted giving birth to me. My brothers no longer looked at me. They declared that only a pure girl like Celia deserved to be their sister, while a sinner like me was utterly unworthy. At the end of the dream, I even dreamed that Celia shoved me over. The sensation of weightlessness jolted me awake instantly. My heart convulsed painfully, and I couldn't help but vomit. Yet a hand reached out and wiped the corner of my mouth. I thought it was my friend and looked up to say, "Thank you." But when I saw who had come, I froze. It was my mother and my 2 older brothers. How could they be here? Am I dreaming? This dream is far too unreal, nothing like the pain I just felt. I wanted to fall back asleep, but my mother held me tightly. "Mia. I'm so sorry, my child." There were tears in both of my brothers' eyes as well. 5 minutes later, I finally accepted reality. They could actually hear my thoughts. No wonder they'd been acting so strangely today, different from the last life. And Julian? Was he like that too? My mother grabbed my hand. "Mia, come with me. This time I'll protect you for sure. I won't let Celia harm you in the slightest." I paused, then pulled my hand away. "If you already know what will happen in the future, then go and change it. As for me, I no longer want to be part of your future, so you don't need to consider me." A sharp pain seized her mother's heart, her eyes stung. "Mia, are you still blaming me? I favored someone undeserving for 10 years and neglected you for 10 years. Let me make it up to you properly, okay? I've already made a secret trip to the company. Although some of those old crooks have formed a united front with your father, it's not too late. I've asked your grandfather for help. His family is influential and wealthy. Those people value profit and might turn around to support us. Your grandfather was heartbroken when he found out and gave me a scolding. I truly know I was wrong. For now, why don't you go stay at your grandfather's house, all right?" Her mother was always like this. When it came to Celia before, she laced her words with saccharine overtures. But she didn't know that Celia didn't care about her at all. Celia wasn't something I coveted, she was what I longed to possess. But when I truly had her, I no longer cared. Still, I nodded, fine, I'll go live with Grandpa. But don't come to bother me, or I'll apply to return to the school's dorms. They wanted to say more, but I sent them all away. This is my friend's home, you've already trespassed, so leave. Having said that, I decisively shut the door. They stood at the doorway with tearful eyes for a long time, only after my eldest brother urged Mother to take care of herself did they help each other and walk away. The next day, because of the college entrance exams, our school was being used as a testing site and all classes were suspended. I could only sling my backpack and hurry over to my grandfather's place. As it happened, I ran into a luxury car halfway there. The driver saw me and quickly wound down the window. "Excuse me, are you Miss Mia?" I nodded. "Please, get in the car, our boss is waiting for you." I hesitated, though. "But, how can I be sure you're a good person?" At that moment the car door opened, and in the back seat sat a person dressed simply yet with an unmistakable bearing. If he hadn't revealed his age, I would have really believed he was a middle-aged man. "Mia, you don't even remember me? I used to hold you when you were little." "Grandpa?" I jumped into the car, thrilled. "You haven't changed a bit, you're just like when I was a child." See, what a way with words this kid has. Her mother used to badmouth her all the time, but I never believed it. A child isn't wicked by nature, how could she bully her sister? Now it looks like that sister is no pushover. A haze rose before my eyes. A relative I hadn't seen in 10 years could believe me, yet the family who lived with me day after day refused to. The driver smiled. "Ah, Miss was protected by you so much that her husband took advantage of her, she didn't even know he had a woman on the side." Grandfather snorted coldly, "She's just stupid, can't blame others." To mistreat his own daughter over an illegitimate child and drive her from home, I've never seen the like. It looked like Grandpa had indeed given Mother a scolding. I tentatively asked, "So, can Mom get the company shares back?" Grandfather chuckled, "If even with my help she can't get them back, then she shouldn't call herself the boss, she can go inside and sit it out, live off the state like everyone else." What a national meal. It seems Grandpa is still very strict with Mom. A bad feeling suddenly rose in my chest. Grandpa isn't going to pressure me, is he? Sure enough, he started commenting on my grades and even said he'd hired a tutor for me, who would arrive very soon. From that day on, I entered a painful life of study. Although my days were spent reciting and drilling problems, I felt very happy at Grandpa's house. After all, for a child who had no one's love, having someone to care was a kind of happiness. Here I didn't have to sleep in the servant's room, nor decide every meal according to Celia's tastes, nor tiptoe and compromise with shrinking hesitation anymore. Here I have my own big room, I can order whatever I want, I can freely make jokes at Grandpa's expense. Grandma had been gone for a very long time. The little old man lived alone, ever since I moved in he'd even hired a caregiver. But the days at home were always so short, college entrance exams would be over before long. That day Grandpa looked at me for a long time before he blurted out, "You haven't gone to see your brother?" Only then did I realize his exams were finished. Before I could answer, there was a sound at the door. "Grandpa. I came to see you." Grandfather took off his glasses. "Ah, Alex is here. Funny, I was just talking about you and then you arrived." Hearing that, a flicker of light appeared in Alex's eyes. "Really? Did Mia mention me? Has she been worrying about my college entrance exam all this time?" Grandfather laughed out loud. "You little rascal, can't it be me who worries about you?" Alex forced an awkward smile. I was wrong. Your sister is still studying, probably has some questions she doesn't understand. Go in and help her." But I quickly locked the door. Alex glanced at Grandpa awkwardly. Grandpa pretended not to notice and kept fiddling with his glasses. Mom followed closely behind. Seeing her, Grandpa was even less pleased. Mom could only offer a conciliatory smile. "Dad. I brought the kids to see you." Heh, 10 years without seeing the child, and now you come to show her off to me. If your husband hadn't conned you bare, would you have come to see me? Mom's thoughts were pierced, and she naturally lowered her head in shame. Dad. I'm sorry to you and Mom, and I'm sorry to my daughter. I'm a failed daughter, and I'm a failed mother. Grandfather put on his glasses. How are things with your company being handled? After they learned I was bringing your project back, that bunch of old thieves switched sides and said they'd support me. We're already arranging to squeeze him out of the company. At that moment, Alex came downstairs with a sulky face. Grandpa, Mia still won't talk to me. What should I do? Water frozen 3 feet deep isn't the work of a single day, his grandfather said. Your college entrance exams are over now. Come by more often when you have time. Even if she really won't forgive you, you shouldn't blame her. Alex shook his head. How could I blame her? I'd only blame myself for believing that mistress's slander. His grandfather probed cautiously, but even if she is a mistress's child, she's still your father's daughter by another mother. You two had such a close bond before. Even if your father was driven down, wouldn't you take this sister in? Alex waved his hand grandly, no way. I won't accept Celia as my sister. If I acknowledge her now, it's just for show. When my dad falls, I'll make them pay. Only then did Grandpa finally breathe a sigh of relief. Not bad, not beyond hope yet. Soon it was time for school. I didn't want to attract attention, so I took the subway by myself. But as soon as I got to school, I found my desk and chair were infested with bugs and ants. Those insects crawled in the gloom, yet they clustered only on my desk and nowhere else. As if there were any doubt, someone must have sprayed some kind of herb on my desk. Isn't it Celia who dares to do something like this? Only before, I didn't dare confront her, afraid she'd turn it back on me. But now. I grabbed Celia and started dragging her outside. What are you doing? A scream rang out, but no one dared to stop me. Because just a few days ago, the Shaw family publicly announced at a charity gala that they were calling off the engagement with Celia. Although Celia has the Shin family behind her, without the Shaw family's huge support, everyone naturally piled on. I hauled Celia to the garbage corner and slapped her hard. Bliss. I instantly felt my blood running freely. Celia clapped a hand to her cheek, glaring at me in disbelief. You actually dared to hit me. You did so many disgusting things, can't I hit you? To my surprise, Celia completely flipped the script. Mia. You were the one who bullied me first. Why did Julian suddenly cancel our engagement? Wasn't it you who sabotaged it? I looked puzzled. What does that have to do with me? I've been locked up by Grandpa for extra lessons this whole time. If you hadn't told me, I wouldn't even have known you and Julian broke up. Could it be that Julian heard my inner thoughts last time, then he sent people to investigate and found out that Celia was hooking up with men? But could he at least give the reason for breaking off the engagement publicly? Doing it like this, Celia will think I interfered. I've been taking the blame for everything my whole life. Just then, Celia suddenly yanked me hard over to the trash can and slammed my face into it. Mia, the Shao family and the Shin family have always been mine. Why are you always competing with me? Why? I didn't care what was in the trash can. I grabbed a pen refill and jabbed it straight at her. Immediately, blood spurted. I broke free of her grip and was about to make a run for it, when unexpectedly I ran into someone I knew around the corner. Julian, what are you? At that moment, Celia hastily flopped down and played the victim. Mia. How cruel you are. You knew I play the piano, yet you deliberately tried to ruin my hands. I reflexively retorted, what are you talking about? You were the one who shoved me into a trash can first. How was I supposed to know you weren't going to suffocate me? Celia scrambled over instead, pitifully grabbing at Julian's pant leg. Brother Julian, my sister is trying to kill me, please save me. But Julian kicked her away with disgust. We're done. There's a public phone over there, call 911 yourself. No, Celia clutched his clothes desperately. Why? Why are you doing this to me? You still like Mia, don't you? You'll break our engagement for her, was it worth it? She almost killed you back then. I couldn't help but roll my eyes, muttering inwardly, you were the one who shoved him, yet you're trying to slander me. But then I suddenly noticed something off in Julian's expression. Wait. Could he hear my thoughts? Did he just hear that? He nodded in astonishment, as if responding to the words in my head. I forced an awkward smile and was about to leave when Celia grabbed my ankle. Mia, you ruined me and you still want to walk away? I looked at my ankle stained with her blood and couldn't help giving her a kick. Get lost, I don't like the dirt. Julian, however, looked at her calmly. Back then, you were the one who pushed me into the pool, weren't you? Celia raised her head in shock and stared at him. Julian, why would you ask that? It wasn't me, it wasn't me. At first, I kept the reason for breaking off our engagement to spare your face, but now, I suddenly feel there's no need to give you any dignity. After he finished speaking, he made a call and instructed, make the reason for breaking the engagement public. Tell everyone that Celia cheated first and was entangled with 8 men. And that she tried to murder me when we were children and framed Mia. Her actions are vile, someone like that must never set foot in the Shao family. Celia shook her head in disbelief, tears rolling down like beads. No. Julian, how could you know? Mia, is it what you said? Is it you? She suddenly lunged at me as if mad, but the voice on the phone snapped her back to reality. By the way, young Master Julian, Celia's father had an incident. I heard there was an internal power struggle at their company and he lost. Also, it seems Celia wasn't even adopted by him, she's the illegitimate daughter he had with his mistress. This has already hit the trending list. If you're interested, young master, you can click to take a look. Good thing you broke off the engagement with that woman early, otherwise our reputation would have been dragged down by this illegitimate daughter. Those few short sentences sent Celia crashing to the ground once more. How could this be? How could this be? Father couldn't have lost. He promised he would drive that woman out and marry my mother. I smiled with relief. Thankfully, in this life that rotten father of hers didn't win. Now they've lost not only their jobs but their reputation as well. The news that Celia was an illegitimate child spread quickly through every street and alley. Her mistress was exposed along with her. Remarkably, Celia's mistress was about to flee. She abandoned both her lover and her daughter. No one expected that their happy little family of 3 would turn against one another so quickly. My father was driven out and saddled with huge debts. He intended to go to the mistress for some emotional comfort, only to find that she had already taken off with every property, car, jewelry, and luxury item he had given her, gone in an instant. As for Celia, before she left she begged her mother to take her along, but what sort of person her mother was, of course she refused. Celia had no choice but to go back to her brothers. She thought they would still dote on her like before, but they produced evidence. A test report, a voice recorder. Celia, you're disgusting. What gives you the right to think we'd take you in? Not only will we not, we'll take everything back, your expensive tuition, your clothes and shoes, your piano room and dance studio, none of it is yours anymore. Also, your bank card has been frozen. From now on you must repay us $30,000 a month, otherwise we have the right to sue you for infringing on our parents' marital property. Celia panicked completely, she almost ran away in disarray. How could this be? How did they find out? They'd known for a long time, but pretended not to, treating their whole family like dogs. No. Even if she had nowhere left to turn, she still had her father. She thought a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. She hadn't imagined that her father's situation wasn't just losing his job, accused of diverting marital assets, he was saddled with enormous debts. Her father grabbed her hand. Celia. Daddy can still make a comeback. Will you stay with me through this period, please? Celia pushed his hand away with disgust. Get lost. You useless piece of trash. You made me lose to that bitch Mia. Now I'm the town pariah. Get out. I'm just an illegitimate child, I don't have a father like you. Her fear of being tainted by that cheap excuse for a father finally pushed him past the limit. He lost control and, right there on the street, slashed Celia 3 times. You're just like your mother, shameless. When I had money you clung to me, and when I ran out you ran away. Your mother ran fast? Then you can die for her. The matter quickly dominated the trending topics again. I watched the news and heard that Celia had become a vegetable, destined to rely on a ventilator for the rest of her life. The moment she was taken off the machine, she would die. But she was already in a state of being neglected, with nobody to cover the soaring hospital bills each day. She had no choice but to be forced to end her own life. And my despicable father was sentenced to death for intentional injury. My doorstep was already piled high with gifts from visitors, sweets and dolls liked by little girls, figurines and dresses loved by young women, and even things women favor, gold, a property deed. Your mom, your eldest brother, your second brother, and some kid named Julian all came saying they want to see you. And yet you still won't? Their voices echoed in my ears again. Mia, Mommy bought you a house, paid in full, I just don't know what kind of decor you like. Will you come out to see Mommy and talk it over? Mia, Big Brother was wrong, it was my fault before. I've graduated from college now, I'm capable. I used my first month's salary to buy you a handbag, take a look, do you like it? Mia, is your study pressure heavy? Do you need me to tutor you? Second brother may be useless in other ways, but he's good at studying. Mia. I'm Julian. I know you don't want to see me, I'm sorry. Actually, I've always liked only you, but after that drowning misunderstanding I forced myself to be with Celia. Now the misunderstanding is cleared up, and I want to be with you again. Will you? Grandpa and I listened to how sincere they were being. Julian even wanted to kneel. I pretended not to hear and kept focusing on my homework. Seeing I was still treating them that way, Grandpa didn't know what to say. All right, study hard, but don't spend all your time on your books. Back then your mother focused solely on studying, and as a result she had no sense when it came to men. I put down my pen. Because of what Grandfather just said, I need to kick Julian out first. I thought Grandfather would scold me for being impolite, but to my surprise he really did send Julian away. A man who doesn't trust you like that is better off not having. Kick the other 3 out too. It's one thing to kick out strangers, but those 3 are your family. My family? One grandfather is more than enough. I looked at Grandfather, and he happened to be looking back at me. We exchanged a smile.